Have you ever walked into a room and immediately sensed the tension between two people who haven't spoken a word? Have you ever met someone for the first time and within seconds knew whether they were lying, hiding something, or genuinely trustworthy? Maybe you've found yourself in conversations where you could predict exactly what the other person would say before they said it, as if their thoughts were written across their face in invisible ink. Perhaps you've noticed how some people seem to possess an almost supernatural ability to understand what's really going on beneath the surface. The unspoken motivations, the hidden fears, the secret desires that people desperately try to conceal. These individuals appear to navigate social situations with an eerie precision, always knowing exactly what cards others are holding, always staying one step ahead in the psychological chess game of human interaction. Maybe you're tired of being the one who gets blindsided by people's true intentions. Maybe you're exhausted from trusting the wrong people, from missing the warning signs that were right in front of you, from being manipulated by those who could read you like an open book while you remained completely clueless about their real agenda. What if I told you that this ability to read minds, not through mystical powers, but through the mastery of psychological observation, is not a gift reserved for a select few? What if I revealed that every human being broadcasts their deepest thoughts and emotions through a language more honest than words, more revealing than any confession, more transparent than any truth serum? Friedrich Nietzsche, the philosopher who dared to peer into the darkest corners of human nature, understood something that most people spend their entire lives missing. There are no facts, only interpretations. But for those who learn to see, for those who develop the eyes to perceive what others cannot, the interpretations become as clear as facts themselves. The human mind is not the fortress it pretends to be. Every thought, every emotion, every hidden agenda leaks through microexpressions, body language, vocal tonality, and behavioral patterns that most people are completely unconscious of. While others focus on the words being spoken, the true masters of human psychology are reading the symphony of signals being unconsciously transmitted by the body, the voice, and the energy itself. If you've made it this far, this video is for you who are tired of being deceived, manipulated, or caught off guard by people whose real intentions remained hidden until it was too late. This is for you who want to develop that almost mystical ability to see through masks, to perceive the truth that lies beneath the performance, to understand not just what people are saying, but what they're really thinking and feeling. But I must warn you, once you learn to see, you cannot unsee. Once you develop this ability to read the human psyche with clarity, you'll realize how much deception, manipulation, and performance surrounds you daily. You'll understand why Nietzsche said, "I've often asked myself whether I am not more heavily obligated to the hardest years of my life than to any others. As my inmost nature teaches me, whatever is necessary, as seen from the heights and in the sense of a great economy, is also the useful par excellence." This knowledge comes with a price, but it also comes with unparalleled power. Let's begin your education in the art of reading minds without saying a word. The language beneath language. Most people live their entire lives believing that communication happens through words. They think that what someone says is what they mean, that how someone presents themselves is who they actually are. But Nietzsche knew better. He understood that man is the being that can lie to itself. And if we can lie to ourselves, imagine how easily we lie to others. The truth is that human communication operates on multiple levels simultaneously. While the conscious mind constructs words and sentences, the unconscious mind is broadcasting a completely different message through what psychologists call nonverbal communication. But this term doesn't capture the full scope of what's really happening. Every human being is constantly transmitting their internal state through dozens of channels they're completely unaware of. Their posture reveals their confidence level, or lack thereof. Their breathing patterns expose their emotional state. The micro movements of their facial muscles betray their true feelings about what they're saying. The position of their feet indicates whether they want to approach or escape. The positioning of their arms shows whether they're open or defending themselves. Dr. Albert Mehrabian's research revealed that communication is only 7% words, 38% tone of voice, and 55% body language. But even this understates the reality. When you truly learn to observe with Nietzschean precision, you realize that the body never lies. Only the conscious mind does. Watch someone's eyes when they tell you they're fine. Notice the micro-expression that flashes across their face for a split second before they force a smile. Observe how their shoulders slightly slump when they claim to be confident. Pay attention to how their voice changes pitch when they're saying something they don't really believe. Marcus Aurelius, the Stoic emperor whom Nietzsche both admired and criticized, wrote, "Very little is needed to make a happy life. It is all within yourself, in your way of thinking." But Nietzsche went deeper. He realized that most people's way of thinking is completely unconscious and therefore completely readable to those who know how to look. The human being is constantly revealing its true nature through what Nietzsche called physiological tells. The body's honest responses that the mind cannot control. When someone is lying, their pupils may dilate slightly. When they're attracted to someone, their body unconsciously mirrors the other person's posture. When they're feeling threatened, they instinctively create physical barriers with their arms or objects. This is why children are such poor liars. They haven't yet learned to control these unconscious broadcasts. They haven't developed the sophisticated mechanisms of self-deception that adults use to hide their true thoughts and feelings from themselves, let alone from others. But here's what most people miss. Even adults who have become master manipulators of their conscious communication still cannot fully control their unconscious signals. The body remembers what the mind wants to forget. The nervous system reacts to what the conscious mind wants to deny. The psychology of deception and truth. Nietzsche observed that the lie is a condition of life, but he didn't mean this cynically. He meant that all human communication involves layers of interpretation, performance, and unconscious filtering. Understanding this is the first step to developing true psychological insight. When people lie, whether to others or to themselves, their nervous system knows it. The stress of maintaining a false narrative creates what psychologists call cognitive dissonance. And this dissonance leaks through microexpressions, changes in breathing, alterations in vocal patterns, and shifts in body language that trained observers can detect. Dr. Paul Ekman, who spent decades studying facial expressions and deception, discovered that there are microexpressions, facial expressions that last for fractions of a second and reveal true emotions before the conscious mind can suppress them. A person might claim to be happy, while a micro-expression of contempt flashes across their face for 1/25th of a second. But reading people goes far beyond detecting lies. It's about understanding the entire psychological landscape of the person in front of you. What are their fears? What are their desires? What are their insecurities? What motivates them? What threatens them? What do they want from you, and what are they afraid you might discover about them? Nietzsche understood that most people are driven by what he called ressentiment, a deep-seated resentment toward life, toward themselves, toward those who seem to have what they lack. This ressentiment colors everything they say and do, and once you learn to recognize it, you can read people's underlying motivations with startling accuracy. Watch for these psychological patterns. The person who constantly talks about how successful they are is usually deeply insecure about their achievements. The individual who frequently mentions how honest they are is often hiding something significant. The one who claims not to care what others think is usually desperately seeking approval. Carl Jung, building on insights that Nietzsche pioneered, observed, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." But the reverse is also true. Everything that people try to hide about themselves is usually what they're most afraid others will see, and these fears manifest in predictable behavioral patterns. The person who crosses their arms when discussing a particular topic is unconsciously protecting themselves from something threatening about that subject. The individual whose voice becomes slightly higher when answering certain questions is likely experiencing stress about those areas. The one who suddenly becomes very still when a specific person enters the room is probably hiding feelings about that individual. The art of psychological observation. Now we move from theory to practice. How do you actually develop this ability to read people with Nietzschean precision? How do you train yourself to see what others miss, to perceive the psychological reality beneath the social performance? The first principle is what Nietzsche called genealogy, the practice of looking beneath surface appearances to understand the deeper forces at work. Instead of taking people's words at face value, you must learn to ask, what psychological need is this behavior serving? What fear is this confidence trying to hide? What wound is this aggression trying to protect? Begin with what psychologists call baseline behavior, observing how someone behaves when they're relaxed and comfortable. Notice their natural posture, their typical facial expressions, their normal speaking patterns, their usual gestures. This gives you a reference point. Any deviation from this baseline is significant and worth investigating. When someone shifts away from their baseline, they're usually responding to internal stress, external pressure, or emotional activation. A person who normally speaks quickly but suddenly slows down when discussing a particular topic is likely being cautious about that subject. Someone who usually makes direct eye contact but starts looking away during certain parts of the conversation is probably uncomfortable with what they're saying or hearing. Dr. Joe Navarro, a former FBI behavior analyst, identified key areas to observe. Feet, the most honest part of the body. Torso reveals comfort and confidence levels. Arms and hands show emotional states. And face displays both conscious expressions and unconscious microexpressions. The feet are particularly revealing because they're the part of the body people are least conscious of controlling. Feet that point toward the exit during a conversation indicate a desire to leave. Feet that are firmly planted usually signal confidence and engagement. Restless feet often reveal internal anxiety or impatience. Pay attention to what Nietzsche would call the will to power, the underlying drive in every human interaction. Is this person trying to dominate, to submit, to escape, to connect, to impress, to hide? Their body will tell you their true intention even when their words suggest something else. The hands are equally revealing. Open palms typically indicate honesty and openness. Hidden hands in pockets behind the back under the table often suggest concealment or discomfort. Clenched fists reveal tension or anger, even when the person's face appears calm. Touching the face, especially the nose or mouth, frequently indicates stress or deception. But the most powerful tool is what Nietzsche called amor fati, love of fate, which in this context means accepting people exactly as they are, without judgment. When you stop trying to change people or wishing they were different, you can see them clearly. Your own emotional reactions stop clouding your perception, and you begin to see the psychological patterns with scientific precision. Reading emotional states and mental patterns. Every emotion has a signature, a unique combination of physical, vocal, and behavioral indicators that trained observers can recognize. Fear constricts the body, raises the voice, and creates protective gestures. Anger expands the body, deepens the voice, and generates aggressive postures. Sadness contracts the body, lowers the voice, and produces withdrawn behaviors. But beyond basic emotions, you can learn to read complex psychological states. Shame creates a distinctive pattern. The person becomes smaller, their voice becomes quieter, they avoid eye contact, and they often touch their neck or throat. Guilt manifests differently. The person may become overly helpful, apologetic, or defensive. Attraction has its own unmistakable signals. Dilated pupils, unconscious mirroring of the other person's posture, leaning in, increased blinking, and what psychologists call preening behaviors, subtle adjustments to hair, clothing, or posture to appear more attractive. Deception creates what Dr. Aikman calls duping delight, a subtle satisfaction that people experience when they believe they're successfully lying. This often manifests as microexpressions of smugness or suppressed smiles at inappropriate moments. Nietzsche wrote about the eternal recurrence, the idea that we repeat patterns endlessly. In psychological terms, this means that people have consistent patterns of behavior, thought, and emotion that repeat across situations. Once you identify someone's core patterns, you can predict their responses with remarkable accuracy. Watch for someone's stress responses. Do they become more talkative or more silent under pressure? Do they speed up or slow down? Do they become more aggressive or more withdrawn? These patterns will repeat whenever they encounter similar stresses. Notice their power dynamics. How do they behave around authority figures versus subordinates? How does their body language change when they feel superior versus inferior? Do they try to make themselves appear larger or smaller in different social contexts? Observe their attachment styles. Do they seek closeness or distance in relationships? How do they handle conflict, by engaging or avoiding? Do they need constant reassurance, or do they maintain independence? These patterns, usually formed in childhood, will manifest in all their adult relationships. Pay attention to their communication patterns. Do they speak in absolutes or qualifiers? Do they take responsibility or blame others? Do they focus on problems or solutions? Do they speak about the past, present, or future? These linguistic patterns reveal deep psychological orientations. The Nietzschean advantage beyond good and evil. Here's where Nietzschean psychology becomes truly powerful. Most people are trapped in what he called slave morality, a system of values that keeps them predictable, controllable, and readable. They're so concerned with appearing good, moral, and socially acceptable that they follow predictable patterns of behavior. When someone is invested in appearing nice, they'll avoid direct confrontation even when it would serve them. When someone needs to be seen as successful, they'll overcompensate in predictable ways when they feel their status is threatened. When someone wants to be viewed as rational, they'll suppress emotional responses that would actually serve them better. Nietzsche's concept of being beyond good and evil doesn't mean being immoral. It means seeing reality without the distorting lens of social expectations and moral judgments. When you stop judging people as good or bad and simply observe them as psychological phenomena, you can read them with scientific precision. Most people telegraph their moves because they're following social scripts. The nice person will give you warning signs before they finally explode in anger. They'll become slightly more tense. Their smile will become more forced. Their responses will become shorter. The rational person will show you their emotional state through microexpressions even while claiming to be purely logical. But there's another level to this mastery. As you develop the ability to read others, you must also learn to control your own signals. Nietzsche spoke of the mask, not as deception, but as conscious self-presentation. When you understand how much you're broadcasting unconsciously, you can begin to choose what you reveal and what you conceal. This doesn't mean becoming manipulative or dishonest. It means developing what Nietzsche called self-overcoming, the ability to transcend your automatic reactions and respond from a place of conscious choice rather than unconscious compulsion. The person who has mastered their own psychological signals becomes nearly unreadable to others. They can choose when to reveal their thoughts and feelings and when to remain mysterious. This gives them enormous power in any interaction because while they can read others clearly, others cannot read them in return. The dark psychology of human nature. Nietzsche was unflinching in his analysis of human nature. He saw the drives for power, status, survival, and reproduction that operate beneath the surface of civilized behavior. To truly read people, you must be willing to see these darker motivations without being horrified by them. Most people are motivated by fear, fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being alone, fear of being seen as inadequate. These fears drive most of their behavior, and once you can identify someone's core fears, you can predict their actions with startling accuracy. Watch for projection. People will accuse others of the very things they're guilty of themselves. The person who constantly talks about others being fake is usually hiding their own authenticity. The individual who's always suspicious of others' motives is often the one with hidden agendas. Notice compensation. People will often develop exaggerated strength to hide their perceived weaknesses. The person who appears supremely confident may be hiding deep insecurity. The individual who seems completely self-sufficient may be desperate for connection, but afraid of vulnerability. Observe displacement. When people can't express anger toward its real target, they'll often redirect it towards safer targets. The person who's frustrated with their boss may come home and be irritable with their family. The individual who feels powerless in their career may become controlling in their personal relationships. Pay attention to what Jung called shadow projection, the tendency to see in others the qualities we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. The person who's disgusted by others' greed may be suppressing their own material desires. The individual who's judgmental about others' sexuality may be conflicted about their own desires. Practical applications. Reading specific situations. In negotiations, watch for when someone's body language contradicts their words. If they say they're flexible but their posture becomes rigid, they're probably not as open to compromise as they claim. If they claim something is their final offer, but their energy remains high and engaged, they likely have more room to negotiate. In relationships, notice the difference between what people say they want and what their behavior actually seeks. Someone might claim they want commitment while consistently choosing partners who are emotionally unavailable. Their unconscious body language around different types of people will reveal their true preferences. In professional settings, observe how people's behavior changes around different levels of authority. The person who becomes submissive around superiors but aggressive toward subordinates is revealing insecurity about their own power. The individual who maintains consistent behavior, regardless of hierarchy, demonstrates genuine confidence. In social situations, watch for what Nietzsche called ressentiment, hidden resentment disguised as moral superiority. People will often criticize in others what they secretly envy or desire themselves. The person who's judgmental about others' success may be harboring their own unfulfilled ambitions. When someone is lying, look for incongruence between verbal and nonverbal communication. The words might sound convincing, but the body will reveal the truth through tension, microexpressions, changes in breathing, or shifts in posture. Liars often unconsciously create physical barriers or distance themselves from you while speaking. When someone is attracted to you, notice mirroring behavior, dilated pupils, leaning in, increased touching of their own hair or face, and what psychologists call limbic bonding, unconscious synchronization of breathing and movement patterns. When someone is feeling threatened, watch for protective gestures like crossing arms, stepping back, creating barriers with objects, or what's called territorial inflation, making themselves appear larger to seem more intimidating. The ultimate skill. Seeing without being seen. The highest level of this art is what Nietzsche might call the observer's advantage, the ability to read others clearly while remaining psychologically invisible yourself. This requires mastering your own unconscious signals so thoroughly that you reveal only what you choose to reveal. Practice what psychologists call emotional regulation, the ability to feel your emotions without being controlled by them. When you can experience anger without showing it, attraction without revealing it, or fear without broadcasting it, you gain enormous strategic advantage in any interaction. Develop what Nietzsche called amor fati, acceptance of reality as it is rather than as you wish it were. When you stop needing people to be different than they are, you can see them clearly. Your emotional reactions stop clouding your judgment. Learn to ask better questions, not just with words, but with your attention. Instead of focusing on what people are saying, focus on what they're not saying. Instead of listening to their explanations, observe their energy. Instead of believing their self-descriptions, watch their patterns. Master the art of strategic ambiguity. When people can't read you clearly, they'll often reveal more of themselves, trying to figure you out. They'll share information, display emotions, or take actions they wouldn't normally take because they're trying to get a reaction from you. But remember Nietzsche's warning: he who fights monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if thou gaze long into an abyss, the abyss will also gaze into thee. The ability to read people clearly comes with the responsibility to use this knowledge wisely. The transformation from observer to master. As you develop this ability to read minds without words, you'll notice a profound shift in how you move through the world. You'll become less reactive because you'll understand that most people's behavior has nothing to do with you and everything to do with their own internal psychological state. You'll become more compassionate because you'll see the fears, wounds, and insecurities that drive difficult behavior. You'll become more strategic because you'll understand what people really want and need, allowing you to communicate more effectively. Most importantly, you'll become more authentic because you'll stop performing for others' approval and start living from your own center. When you can read the psychological games people play, you lose interest in playing them yourself. Nietzsche spoke of self-overcoming, the process of transcending your conditioned responses and choosing your actions consciously. This is the ultimate goal. Not just to read others, but to become unreadable yourself except by choice. The person who masters this art becomes what Nietzsche called noble, not in the sense of social status, but in the sense of psychological sovereignty. They're not controlled by others' opinions, manipulated by others' emotions, or trapped by social expectations. If this video has opened your eyes to the hidden world of psychological communication, you might find the other insights on this channel valuable for your growth. Feel free to subscribe if you'd like to continue this journey of understanding human nature. Remember, the goal is not to become manipulative or to use this knowledge to harm others. The goal is to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to respond consciously rather than react unconsciously. Write "I see clearly" in the comments if you're ready to start developing this ability to read minds without saying a word. Let's create a community of those who choose awareness over illusion, understanding over assumption, clarity over confusion. The weak are controlled by what they cannot see. The strong master what others cannot perceive. The wise choose when to look and when to look away. Your education in the art of reading minds has begun.